today I am with Sharmila, and we have been looking at education, learning from so many different perspectives. But today we want to have a look at it from a child's perspective. And Sharmila um, is well connected with the homeschooling and unschooling community of India. And listeners who are new to this idea need to have a little bit of your background, Sharmila. So, in brief, if you can tell us a little bit about your background, from where you are coming, like a short story, please share your story so that the listeners can understand.
Thank you, Saurav, for inviting me for this podcast. And it is indeed a huge honor to be talking on your platform. So, to begin with, I'm a mother to 3 children and innumerous non human creatures in my house. We my quest around education, learning, and children, basically children, their growth, their development has been there for quite some time. In fact, I would say ever since I was around 14, 15 years old, and I started teaching children as part of earning some pocket money. So I used to take tuitions. Right from there till now, it has been a long journey of probably over 30 years. And with every child that I have interacted with or related to, I have learned something new about children and how they grow, how they develop. We also, in our journey in homeschooling, unschooling, I think one needs to also understand the history behind why we got into unschooling. So I am also a graduate in social work. I've done my post graduation in social work, and my constant focus has been with child development. So working with children in various vulnerable situations, right from children of prostitutes to children from slum areas, children of migrated populations. I've worked with everyone, and and the only question that kept bothering me all the time throughout my journey with children has been that who is hearing the child's voice? Are we really giving importance to what the child has to say or what the child is thinking, feeling? Or is it always through the perspective of the adult as to how they perceive a child, how they look at what the child is thinking, feeling, how the child is making sense of the world around them? So, this question has constantly come into my purview whenever I've been with children. And I think I really got into depths of understanding the answers or finding the answers was after my children were born, especially my oldest. So, because that was a child that I saw grow from a small speck to a complete human being. He's 18 years today, now. And yeah, so that's a little about me. Maybe I can talk now about what did I learn from my son and how my understanding towards child development and who is a child grew and changed after my son was born. So when my son was born, I literally could see him learn on things on his own. And it's not only about walking and talking or crawling and the usual motions of life, but also understanding what the person in front of him is thinking, feeling, and adjusting one's behavior according to that. So, so when he was really little, in fact, Aditya, um, I think it was a joy to be with him and to see him grow. He was a quick learner, but maybe it was also because did a lot of talking with him, and it was a constant chatting between me and him, even when he was a little baby, that got him to notice things, observe things, and also make sense of things. And language development too took place very quickly. So by the time he was one, he could express himself in a few words in Marathi. Marathi was our local language, is our mother tongue. And by the time he was 1.5, he could speak Marathi fluently, and he could make sentences, and he could express what he was thinking, feeling, and so that was amazing to watch. Around 2, when he started going to a daycare, he picked up English very quickly. And by the time he was 2.5, he was fluent in speaking English. And by the time he was around 3.5, 4, he could read. And one thing with him was that he started writing, and he learned the alphabet on his own, just through observation around him, alphabets, numbers. He learned to write them too on his own. And the kind of questions that he would have, like, okay, what is a shadow? Why do you see it? Why do you say you see it only when the sun is there? You can see a shadow even when there's a light bulb or a street light, or even at home you see shadows. So he had questions which were really deep and interesting. He constantly questioned the usual norms. So he said, leaves are not always green. And why do you call an orange an orange? As you know, those kind of questions he would have. So with him, I started making sense of children being, these dynamic little beings, their mind working overtime to make sense of things around them. And he would depend on not only the answers that I gave him, but these answers had to make sense to him. He had to feel that, yes, these answers are right, and these answers are making sense, basically. So that was when I realized that children are not like, beings with, empty pots in which you fill information and give them knowledge or give them information, but they are constantly using all their senses to make sense of the world around them. And these senses are all 5 senses. So it was never like I'm only seeing something and understanding. He wanted to touch, feel, taste, all hear the sounds around him to make sense of things. So that's the first point that I would like to make today in this podcast, is that children are not innocent little beings. They are not clean slates that have to be filled in, but they are meaning-making machines. They are, and they use their thoughts, feelings, and their senses to make sense of things around them. And once I saw this in my oldest son, I could see I was a lot more comfortable with the next 2. So I have 3 children, as I mentioned earlier. So the second one grew with the older one as his, as the peer or the older sibling that one looks up to. So I didn't have to do much. Now the older sibling was the one from whom the younger one learned everything, like a mentor. But this was until he was around 6 years old. So until he was 6, his brother was everything to him. He followed the older one like a tail, and the older one was also fine with that. But once he turned 6, he started realizing that he doesn't need to be in the shadow of his brother, and he can do things independently, and he just bloomed. And that was when I realized that by default, probably his comfort zone was his brother. But once he realized that he didn't have to be in the comfort zone of his brother, he just bloomed in a different way. He realized that his likes and dislikes, his wants, his desires, his interests were way different from his brother, and now he started doing different things. So once again, I realized that he too was a meaning making machine. He too was somebody who was constantly trying to make sense of the world around him. And with him, I also noticed that he was trying to understand what it meant to him. So the I in my second one was more apparent because he was also vociferous in saying, "This is what I want." Maybe in the earlier experiences, I didn't notice that element too much because maybe I was also not aware as a parent that I have to think about the agency of each of my child. The third one has been a complete joy because I had unconditioned myself to as part of the expectations of what a parent should be and how a parent should behave. So with my earlier two, there were a lot of elements of me teaching them about the good and the bad, the right and the wrong, me talking to them and telling them about this is the way things are done and we have to follow. But with my daughter, it was completely different. So, because I had unconditioned, I had deschooled myself too, and I had realized that it's not about me forcing my ideas or the traditional norms and practices of life, but it is about she making more sense about them and following them because she believed in them or she felt this is what I need to do. So she also had a lot of questions. She found it very different to be with us and to be with the external world because the external world would want her to behave in a particular way, especially being a girl child too. Oh, and we were more open to her freedom, her autonomy, and her choices. So right from when she was around 1.5, what clothes she would like to wear, what food she would like to eat, and if she didn't like to eat whatever was cooked at home, that was also okay with us. So it was a very different journey with her, whether she wanted to go out, whether she wanted to play with somebody. Earlier with my boys, it would be more like cooperate with all your friends, share your toys, don't make a mess when you're going outside. Now it was a little different. It's not that we were all about creating messes and my daughter or my children talking in any which way they wanted to with their friends and not sharing their toys at all. But now I realize the difference that if I wanted them to share, it's not because I am asking them to, but it is because they feel like sharing. And also respecting the fact that if they don't want to share a toy, there is some thought process behind it and they have a reason behind it, which they may or may not be able to express, and being okay with that. So Tara, my daughter, we never really forced her to do anything, and surprisingly, we saw that she always wanted to share. She always wanted to be with other friends. She wanted a group of other children with her, and this was from a very young age. And there were times when she would say, "But this is mine." And that would also be okay with us, and we would respect and we would tell the other child that this is hers, so she will tell you if she wants to share and when she wants to share it with you. So it was never now like, you have to do this or you have to do that. Oh, he's asking, they have come to our house, so you have to give it. But now it was a different, polite way of saying no when you don't want to do something. So this has been a huge difference, and I have seen that all my three children, once I started respecting the fact that they were individuals who could make sense of the world, they started perceiving me differently too. Now it was no longer me as their mom, and they have to listen to me, and that's how it was more about them expressing their reasoning behind not wanting to do something or wanting to do something in a particular way. So so that's where our relationship also changed. We became more of friends. We became more of people who have mutual genuine respect towards each other. And it's always said, no, that when you speak to an adult, you never force your ideas upon them. It's considered to be rude, it's considered to be unacceptable. And we constantly say that you have to accept everybody else the way they are and accept their ideas. Once I started accepting my children the way they are, they started accepting people around them the way they were. So now there was never a problem of, behaving in a particular way just to please somebody or just to make somebody feel happy. It was more about, okay, you want to do something your way, you do it my way, I'm going to do it my way. Or there were times when we used to have friends of Aditya over at our place. He would play with them for a little while and then he used to be in his room reading a book. Even respecting something like that and telling the other children that you all continue playing, you all don't want to have him all the time with you. It's okay. And he's been absolutely okay with you using any of his toys, any of his things, as long as you all are playing and you all are happy. So just seeing that children can be in their own spaces and they don't have to be into each other's path all the time. So that was also something that I have seen, experienced, and I have. And somewhere, as you work with your own children and when you start working with other children, the same principles you start applying with them. So now I no longer started looking at children as innocent beings or children who have to be told what to do. But now it's more about what would they want to do, how would they want to spend their time. So my way of teaching in schools also changed. So I have been teaching with alternate schools. I did a stint for a while, worked with a couple of schools, and this is where I changed the way I worked with children, the way I worked with even the teachers, making them constantly see that, think of things from the child's point of view and not from just an adult centric view. So when I used to work in Mysore with a school called ICANN, the curriculum that I designed was also along with the children. So the beginning of the year, we would sit down together, make a list of what would they want to learn throughout the year. And then we would club them together as themes. And even within the theme, whenever we started a theme, we would talk about how would you want to deliver, how would you want to learn this theme? And kind of include, I was quite impressed by the multiple intelligence theory. So try and include all different activities which include all different intelligences were constantly there. And even when I worked with children, it was more about natural consequences and not artificial consequences that I put on them just to make them comply and make them listen. So these were the changes that came in me gradually. Sometime in 2017, my son, who was going to an alternate school, decided that he no longer wanted to go to the alternate school also, which was quite open. And he said he would like to be more at home and be homeschooled. And since I'm a teacher, I could teach him. And at the same time, we saw there was an unschoolers camp. So I kind of asked him whether he would like to go to the camp, and he was quite happy. He was just around 10 and a half or so at that time. And he went for the camp. One thing that I would like to mention over here, the organizers did not speak to me about whether my son wanted to join the camp or not. They constantly said that we have to communicate with your child. So this was kind of a reinforcement to me that yes, they also look at children as equal partners, as people who don't have to be babied, and it's not the parent who is taking the decision, but the child can take his own decision of whether he wanted to attend a camp or not. So that kind of built my curiosity. I wanted to know what unschooling is. So after the camp, we also attended a learning societies unconference where I met other unschooling parents. I was highly impressed by the work and the parenting style of Dola Das Gupta, and also Aditi Mathur. They run a center called Aruhi in Bangalore. So I was a lot impressed by both of them, and we felt that yes, this is what we would like to do, and we would like to quit schooling and get into unschooling completely. Um, following LSUC, we also attended a families learning together at Udaipur, run by Manish Jain and Vidhi Jain. And that was again when I met many more unschooling parents, and there were a lot of discussions on what unschooling is and how the deschooling phase happens, and how I need to uncondition myself and unlearn my parenting styles. So there were so though I was forward thinking and though I thought differently, there were still many strains of being a conditioned parent and doing things in a particular way. Especially, I was very particular about cleanliness in the house and keeping toys properly and washing the toys every few days and ensuring my children wore proper shoes, proper clothes. And my boys were more of, who cares if our socks are not matched? And so what if I don't brush sometimes, or if I don't take a bath? And those were completely no things to me. But when I heard and stories of various unschoolers, and the thing that they constantly told me was that with freedom comes responsibility, but you have to learn to be okay with their freedom, and you should avoid butting in and pushing your thoughts and your expectations on your child. It took me some time to not some time, I would say it took us more than 2-3 years to completely deschool. In fact, there are times when I feel I'm still deschooling in many different ways, because as a parent, you have your fears, you want the best for your children, you want their future to be great, and you're constantly worried, you're anxious, because at the same time, you want to do a good job. You want to be a good parent. You don't want that thappa of being a parent who doesn't care about her children, who's not present, who's not molding them. So, there is so much that you have in your head about expectations, and you build everything on that. So deschooling was all about that. I won't say I'm completely off fear, but now I know how to use this fear in a more positive way, or in a more appropriate way, where I trust and respect my children and their choices and their way of living life. So that's the major difference.
Can you come to a point? So how you will define who is a child?
So I look at a child as an individual, an alive individual who can make sense of the world around them. And with every experience, they are storing a lot of information, a lot of things in their brains. And these past experiences help them work with their new experiences. And they kind of help in making sense too. So, when you're born, maybe you have experiences of your past life that are there. I'm not I'm not sure about that. That's a mystery, and I rejoice the fact that it's a mystery. But as they grow, when they sense things like, a mother's warm hands, when somebody else picks the child up, they can differentiate whether this person is different and it's not my mom. Then even the way language develops, or even the way you relate and you understand safety and everything, the way you know you have strength enough to sit down or to crawl or to walk. So children are individuals who are making sense of the world constantly. Their past experiences play a huge role on what they are going to learn ahead, and the way they have made sense of their past experiences play a huge role on what they are going to learn in future. We are also, children are social beings, so they are not existing alone in isolation. So they are constantly relating with people, trying to understand how other individuals also think, and then where do they lie in that equation. So they are also constantly making sense of their relationships with others, and then they decide how they want to behave with each one. So we have often seen, and I've also often heard parents say that, oh, the child is very different with his teacher, and then at home he's different. It's a good thing, right? Because the child knows and has made sense of how he should behave with a particular teacher, or a particular friend, or a particular relative, or even with both the parents. He's different. He's different. He or she is different with the mom as well as the dad. So in a nutshell, they are meaning making machines. They are, I shouldn't say machines because they are also feeling beings. So, wrong choice of words. They are meaning machine making individuals, not meaning making machines. So, they are human, and yeah, so that's what a child is.
As a parent, when we generally think about a child's development, we always think that the child needs some kind of a guidance in many aspects of their life. So when the idea of guidance comes in, uh, naturally from the parents' point of view, that guidance cannot be compartmental guidance. कि मुझे सिर्फ इस चीज़ में गाइड करना है, वो तो उसको पता है. They will guide in all the aspects of their life. So do you think that this idea or this notion of guiding a child is the first step towards uh, bringing a barrier in their natural learning process?
So, when we look at a child, or when we are with a child, and if we think we are their guide, then we expect the child to follow what we say. We expect them to believe that since we are their guide, we know everything and we are worldly wise, and we have all the answers, and they have to follow us. So once this have to element comes in anybody's life, and whether it is an adult or a child, if the have to element comes into the one's life, then a person feels forced. Then a person feels they have to do it. They have to behave in a particular way. And then that is what ruins their ability to think, ability to make sense of things, and then take a decision on their own. In fact, there's a point that I would like to make with the audience is about mistakes and the way we perceive mistakes. And so there have been many a times that my children too, or children around me in various settings have made decisions that have either harmed themselves or have harmed somebody else. Now, as parents, with the way we are, with the way we focus on rewards and punishments, positive reinforcements, negative reinforcements, we often, if there is something where somebody else is harmed, like a child gets into a fight with another, we immediately reprimand the child. We immediately give them a punishment or keep them away from, say, doing something, or we say you're grounded and you cannot go out for a few days, or you cannot use your phone, or you can't see watch the television, or you can't have your gaming time. So we bring in these consequences which are negative. And however, if we simply have a dialogue with the child to understand what triggered the fight, what made the child lift his hand or beat up somebody else, and we have a non judgmental discussion over it. And then we focus on a dialogue where you talk about what could be other ways which were both more of a win win situation to both, where both could have benefited. If we just simply have a talk around that and leave it, and this may not happen immediately. This, in fact, should never happen immediately after a fight has taken place, because the emotions are running on a high level. And when the emotions are very high, one doesn't think straight. The response is not a balanced one, it is triggered by what you're feeling. So if you're feeling anger at that time, you're going to retort in an angry manner. If you're sad and if you're feeling guilty about it, your response is going to be bringing the guilt out. So one has to think of it in a situation where the child, or even, and this goes for the adult also, so when they have calmed down, so then it's not reaction and it's a response. So there is nothing called mistakes. These are all part of life, and if you don't learn from these experiences, then there is a problem. In fact, whether it, there could be situations where everything has gone great and you've done extremely well. Even from that, there are certain learnings that you can experience, that you can have. Say, for example, you ace your exams, you get amazing grades in your exams. Now, what is that doing to you? What is it that's doing to that particular child and the parent? Being aware of that becomes important. Now, I have seen quite a few children, they start feeling they are on top of the world and they are better than the other children, and they start developing an ego, a false ego, that I'm the best and the others are not as good as me. Again, that's harmful, right? So a positive experience can also lead to negative consequences. And this is where, a parent, or not, maybe not a parent also, somebody who's part of the life of their life, if they have dialogues on this, and they have and these dialogues are not planned dialogues, they have to just come in the course of life. So over a dinner table conversation, or just while taking a walk with your child, or doing some activities together in the kitchen, or cleaning the house, or folding clothes. It's not something where you sit and artificially bring up a topic and talk about it. It has to be in a very natural way, because then the effect and the impact is a lot more. Otherwise, the child starts thinking, "Oh, she's planned this, she's thought about this, so she has something in her mind that she wants to." And then once again, the whole game of wanting to please the parent or put up an image in front of the parent comes up. So, and once a child learns to put up an image, then it's very difficult for them to be true to themselves and to be aware of what they are and how they take and how they relate to people and what are their the way they are. So
Yeah. So that brings me to the idea of a child's freedom and autonomy, you know. So, how can you elaborate on that?
if you look at life, or if you look at even a particular day in anybody's life, not only a child, it could be anybody, we are constantly making decisions. We are constantly deciding what to do, whether to get up from the bed, whether to get up from this side or the other side, what blanket to take at night, whether to use the bathroom immediately or go into the kitchen and start working. So every step of our life is actually we are making decisions. Now, how do we make these decisions is crucial to understand. So, most often, are we making these decisions because this is needed for the hour? This is what is the need of the hour? Or are we making these decisions because, oh, if I don't do this, my dad is going to be angry. If I don't do this, I'm going to suffer, or there's going to be there's some fear associated with not doing something in a particular way. So when we talk about freedom and autonomy, when will a child know what is the need of the hour? When will a child know how the decisions that he's taking is impacting others? And when how would he or she know how to make that choice, how to make that decision? It's only when they experience it, right? If they they experience something which doesn't go right with somebody or goes right with someone else, and that's how they are also relating with the world around them. And as I said, children are don't live in isolation, right? They are constantly relating to people around them. So so this is where I feel freedom and autonomy, freedom to make choices, freedom and autonomy of choices where they are not influenced by anybody else, but they are making sense and making the choices on them by themselves. And this doesn't mean that the other individual or an adult in their life don't express their opinions or don't say how would they have behaved. It doesn't mean that, but it is about giving the child the freedom that, okay, you've heard my side of the story. Now you make a conscious decision and being okay with it. So that's again where the parent's role comes in, or any adult caregiver or important adult in the child's life. That's the role that comes in, where the parent is okay with the decisions that the child makes. And that once that happens, that means the child has his freedom. Being okay and being with the child in the experience, and not stepping apart and saying that, oh, you did this way, so now it is completely your responsibility. You deal with it. Helping the child understand what they are feeling. So if you do that, you're taking them to a guilt trip, right? Oh, ye kiya. So I can, though my children don't like me giving their examples, but there have been occasions when my children have taken certain decisions which later they feel that maybe they, or the decisions that they have taken have not led to positive consequences. So I do avoid giving too many examples of, because they don't like it. Again, here comes their freedom and autonomy too, because there was a time when I was really active on social media and I used to constantly talk about my children. And then one fine day, my boys came and told me that we like our privacy. We don't want the world to know what we are doing constantly. And so that was a huge learning for me. And that was them trying to tell me that we have our freedom and we are individuals who like our privacy. So you need to respect that. So that was a huge learning for me too. So children, so with my children now, I do avoid giving examples, but I would like the entire community to know that they are normal children. They, just as they are loving individuals who are happy children, at the same time they have their moments when they are angry, they are and out of anger they behave in ways which harm other children or harm themselves, or even they hurt me at times. I think it's more about how you deal with such situations, how you work through these situations that become important, and not about me telling them this is right or wrong, but it is more about understanding from their perspective, as well as stating what it did to me or what it is doing to others. And that's where the maturity grows.
One of the things that unschooling children have to deal with is the interaction with children of their own age, which typically in a school they get it as a daily routine. And here, probably it's not there. So the question is, I'm not saying it is good or bad. This could be good. This could be. It would have its pros and cons, and your perspectives on that.
So with us, it has been a little different because as parents and as children, we've never been into each other's lives, even before we unschooled. So my children always had a lot of friends around them, and they were always with other children, with other adults, and it was never that they had to constantly spend time just with us and we were the only people in their lives. And this was when they were schooling and they were unschooling. So schooling after hours, they were with friends. Playing, free play was a crucial element of their growth. And you can't have free play with a parent. You free play with other siblings and other peers, right? So wherever we were, wherever we lived, going down and playing was an important element, whether they were schooled or non unschooled. When they started unschooling, my boys did go through phases where they loved their solitude. They loved being with themselves, and we respected that. It at times did test me because I was in a phase where I wanted to interact with parents, with other individuals. I was becoming close to many other unschooling parents, and they were it it kind of, I was building my own social circle, and my children didn't want it. My children preferred their solitude. They preferred being with themselves, playing games or reading books, or just doing nothing, maybe, or just being by themselves, I would say. So I had to respect that. And I had to be okay with their solitude. So there have been times when we've had get togethers in the house, and my children, boys, were in their room. There were other children who would interact with everybody else in the social gathering, but my children would prefer to be in their rooms. And we were okay with it. And once we were okay with it and we let that unfold for them, they both slowly came out of that solitude phase and then wanted to be amongst other children, other peers. That was when my son, oldest, turned 16. So it took a long time too, I think. About 3 or 4 years, 3 years, they must have spent more time with themselves, apart from sporadically going for camps and activities. So when my son turned 16, he had also been to Auroville for a few months, and he'd come back and he said that he wanted to give his examinations. He wanted to give board examinations, and he didn't want to do it alone. He wanted to do it with peers. He said that he would like to go back to the learning center he was part of before we started unschooling. So for me as a parent, because it was more of, I have to make this happen for him because this is what he wants and this is what is his next path in life. So I made it happen for him because there are certain things that a parent, being adults, have to make things happen for them. He played a huge role because he convinced the learning center that even though for 5 years he hasn't touched academics, he can cope and he can do well. And he did. Again, this is his choice, his freedom. He wanted to do it in a certain way, and I just helped make it happen. Within 6 months, he gave his board exams and he scored extremely well. So similarly, my second son, he also spent a lot of time in solitude. In fact, my second one is more of a social bird, loves having people around, friends around, him. But he went through a phase where he was just glued to his computer almost a year after an episode that had happened with another friend in a social setting. So there were children playing, and there was an episode. And post that, he didn't want to step out of the house. So we respected that too. For almost a year, he didn't step out. And when he was ready, he stepped out, and things slowly just became different. And once again, he started interacting with other children, playing with them, playing football, playing badminton, playing all other games, going out with his friends for ice cream, and that was quite surprising because that was a testing time again for me, because I felt, oh my God, he's such an extrovert. He loves being amongst children, and he's just with himself. But allowing him that space and allowing myself to also keep my emotions, and constantly reflecting on what that is doing to me helped. And I learned so much from that experience, that children do go through phases where they might want to be with themselves, they might want to interact socially. So the choice should always be of the children. Again, it can't be an adult saying कि बच्चों के साथ खेलेगा नहीं, बाहर जाएगा नहीं, तो बड़ा कैसे होगा. That's again an adult centric way of thinking, right? But being okay with what the child wants, and being okay with the other extreme also, where the child wants to constantly spend time with peers and friends, being okay with that also is crucial. So when you look at a child not as the child in the popular sense of the way, but as a child who has freedom, who can make choices, then your behavior towards it changes. You no longer look at the child as somebody whom you have to tell. It's more about rejoicing what the child wants to do and how they want to do it. So that was the huge difference with us. So it has never been that my children have to find a social circle and I have to make it happen for them, and I have to force a social circle on them. Today they relate with all multiple age people from multiple age groups. They are at times they have a very just a hi hello kind of interaction. With some people they interact more, with some they have deep connections with. Being okay with that. And isn't that true for all of us adults also? Like some are just acquaintances, some are just hi hello people, some are close friends. So just being okay with that with children too is crucial.
I have a follow-up question to that. Most of the unschooled and homeschooled children that I have worked with, their one challenge is society. Okay, society will tell them, "What? You're not going to school? Are your parents crazy?" And I would like a response from both perspectives. From the perspective of parents, because there are people because it's a social taboo, and you're going against the social taboo. And then, did you have to prepare your children to respond to such questions, and the children's perspectives on this question?
So, whenever this question is asked to me, I remember a time when a 7-8-year-old girl had come and told me, "Oh, your children don't go to school. What will they become when they grow up? My mother says वो लोग बाई हो जाएंगे." So then I had just kind of asked her, what's wrong in being a bai? Bai is a person who does house help, helps out, housekeeping jobs in a household. So we're like, what's wrong? Is there something wrong in being a bai? She said, yeah, you can't, only uneducated people are bais. So I left the conversation at that. I engaged the girl in the play that she was into with my daughter. So I have been asked this question not only by adults but even by children, and I just take it in my stride. I don't let it bother me. My daughter, she went through a phase when we had shifted to this society, and parents looked at her with curiosity, and they were also wary about their children being playing with her. So there were times when she used to feel very bad, and she was hardly 5, 6 years old, and she used to feel bad that she's not being invited for birthday parties, and parents often are very wary about their children playing with her in the garden, and many a time she's playing by herself. So my mantra was to just listen to her and be patient. So there were also times when I went to the garden and I played with her so that she wouldn't miss having other children around. And slowly, steadily, things changed. You know, when you just let things to time without overthinking or judging or blaming, things just work out. And over time now we've reached a phase where she has 4 birthday invitations for next week on the same day, and she's now thinking of which one to accept. And so it takes time. One needs to have patience. The world outside, whenever they see something new, most often they are asking questions out of curiosity. They are asking questions because this is something way different from a normal way of living, right? So they might sound judgmental because of the lack of words. They also come from a conditioned environment, right? So they are never going to have the right words to express what is going inside them. So being okay with it and being just fine, taking it in your stride and living each day as it comes helps. So even with my second son, when he was at home, they were like, "Oh, your son doesn't come out to play. He doesn't want to play." And when he would go out to play, hey, then it would again be, "Oh, some weirdo is playing with other children." But you just take it in your stride. You're just okay with it. You don't unnecessarily talk ill of the parents or ill of anybody else. You just say that, okay, this is how they think. It's okay. It's fine. And things change. Things are different. I recently had a parent who came and told me, my daughter constantly says, I wish I was homeschooled like Sidhu because he gets so much freedom and he's allowed to do whatever he wants to. And then the mother said, but I can't do that. It's not possible. My whole life will collapse. So I said, you don't do it, no, then. As long as the balance created in your house, all of y'all are happy the way y'all are, and the child is okay, you're okay, and y'all have a great relationship with each other, it's fine. Problem comes when your relationship gets hampered. Then you have to think about why it is being hampered, what is causing problems in the relationship, and then you work on it. And as your daughter is growing, she's going to become an adult soon. She's 15, 16. So soon she's going to be 18. She's going to have to take decisions on her own. And that is where you need to now start re-looking at the way you force things on your daughter and make it more conversation based. And just this conversation with the parent made the parent feel so relaxed. And so said, yeah, there are times when I don't talk to my child, I'm only telling her. So I said, yeah, you have to talk, you don't tell. We never tell. So yeah, so these little changes with the way you talk to people outside do help. If you go on a blaming mode, you've already judged them as bad beings, then your entire interaction is going to be that way. So
All right. So we have come across quite in-depth understanding of the perspective of a child who is a child, the importance of their freedom. But I think when we talk about a family, we also need to see the involvement of the father, right? So, and especially when we talk about alternative education, homeschooling, unschooling, it is not about only the mother and the child, it's the entire family who goes through a huge process. So, can you throw some light on the involvement of your husband as an example? Ki what all he has given into this process of unlearning, learning, unschooling, and all.
So, fortunately for me, my spouse has been my best friend all the time. It's not, I wouldn't say that our relationship has always been of best friends, but we've grown to be best friends, and we share with each other and take each other's opinions and perspectives about everything, not only about how to raise our children, but also decisions around careers, around the way the house is run, what groceries to buy, everything. We talk about everything in a very warm way and accepting way. So he, I think, more than, because he comes from a very traditional background where adults have always decided how he lives his life. So that did come into play when our children were born. However, the difference was that he always looked at the children as individuals who were alive, and he loved spending time with them. He loved doing things, doing chores, and being with them since they were born. So that was a positive, because my children always felt warm with their father. As their schooling and other experiences started coming in, we would constantly have a chat over what happened at school today, and both of us would talk about it when the children weren't around, and what we felt and how we felt about it, and so on. So he also maintained something constantly, still maintains it, that there are certain things that I know more than him, and there are certain things that he knows more than me. So the things that he knows more about, we have this way where he takes decisions around that. So buying a car or buying a house or where to invest money, and all that goes into his forte. He does the research and so on. Whereas taking care of the house, looking after the children comes very natural to me. Plus, since I've been working with children, so my understanding about how children develop and all um, is a lot more than his understanding. So, a mutual respect that we both have are good in different areas, and to rely on that person to make decisions in that particular area. So, and the other element that we've always followed was that we both have to be on the same page, especially when it concerns family matters. So even if either one of us have some misgiving or a thought that says stop, then we both stop, and we are patient till we feel that we are ready to take the step. So even pulling my children out from schools, or even the step of homeschooling them, unschooling them, has been taken when we both felt we were on the same page. So that makes a huge difference. So he has always been supportive. He does leave a lot around children to me, and at times he does feel that being a father, he has to guide them and he has to tell them. But somewhere, since we look at this entire life as a journey and not as okay, ये ऐसा हो गया मतलब ऐसा ही है, and this is how you are, and not passing judgments. So we let experiences unfold. So, okay, you reacted in a way where you told your son or your daughter not to do something, or to do something in a particular way. Now let's think about it. How has that affected them? Can we look at it differently? Can we do it differently? And again, this doesn't happen in a, like, a dialogue, or you sit down and you talk about it. It happens very naturally. So that respect that we have for each other, and acceptance. And it's not that only him, but there are times when he feels I could have behaved differently, or I could have done something differently. Me being open to that also is very important. And because we talk to each other, we don't leave things, we just don't leave things saying that ये ऐसे ही है या वो वैसे ही है. So that again brings in a huge difference about how we look after our kids and how we raise them and so on. Most often I've seen that we both have the same view. We have the same thing. Okay, children want this, let's do it. If they want it for this reason, if we feel that, okay, maybe we need to have a dialogue with the child, we need to talk with them about this, we do that. So and all this just happens in a very natural way. It's no longer ki baitho baat karte hain and then you take a decision. So it's never like that. So yeah, role of my spouse or Chaitanya in this entire journey has been of being an equal partner, of relying on me also, respecting me, respecting the children, and being with us in the entire journey as a complete part of it. So,
Yeah. Okay. So to conclude the episode, what I can say is that my learning from this podcast is giving a lot of time to whatever we are doing, whether it's our children's learning process, the relation, their understanding, their freedom. Things happen at the right time. And giving that time, giving that space, giving that freedom, bringing in discussion, chat, all these things goes hand in hand, and these are all equally important. Wonderful. So thank you so much for all the sharing and all my best wishes. And thank you for hosting us for 2 days. Yesterday we recorded with Hasmukh, and today we are recording with you. And hopefully in the future also we'll record a few more exciting podcasts at your place. Thank you so much. Have a great night.
you're most welcome. And the team, Harshad. And the Mr. Pav also, which Chaitanya made. So, okay, thank you so much. It's always a joy to be on your episodes and events. I think I started with y'all only. The first one that I did was with you.